So today I would like to discuss, we are going now to start cleaning up the chametz, and we're all very nervous about chametz, and I would like to discuss what is chametz d'oraisa and what not. So how do we define it? Now, what is clear is that in the Torah it just says lo sochel chametz, but lo yochel chametz lo yochel, it says that, and machmetz lo sochelu, but the Torah does not give us a definition of what is chametz. We don't even know that chametz has to do with the dough. We know it thanks to lo sochenu chametz. By mincha, we see all kind of other definitions, but in generally speaking, the word chametz means sour. Chametz, sour. Is it really the meaning of the word chametz, or simply the word chametz is derived from the chametz? So we don't know exactly what is the definition of chametz. The Torah doesn't give us a way how to define chametz. Chazal have three places. So there are three places where there is an element of chametz. So there is chametz and matzah. So matzah, we need to know what chametz is, because only things that can become chametz can issur on matzah. So we need to know what chametz is so that we know what matzah is. And matzah is also dependent on challah. When you use the chiyuv of challah, it depends also only on the chamesh aminim, which can be matzah or that can become chametz. And so you have here tripartite, and we don't know what is learned from what. And sometimes you learn one direction and we learn from another direction, Yerushalmi, the Bavli, the Rishonim. So there's a lot of balagan. So they are all related to each other, but they are not clearly defined. So it seems from the Bavli, and I will now start with the Bavli. If I say because I'm saying Bavli because I will soon give you Yerushalmi, but from the Bavli, it seems that they give us what we call axiomas. Axiomas means they are statements without any biological proof. So they say, for example, that rice is not becoming chametz, but it's maschiach. It's a sichoin. It's smell normally sichoin in modern Hebrew, but I don't know what it means exactly in the time of Chazal. But let's assume that it is a bad smell. It's foul. What? Bad. It's something bad, but it's whether it is smell or bad taste or maybe it's a bad texture. I don't know what it means exactly. But today sichoin is for sure to do with maschiach, with smell. Then they also give us that the hiluch meal. So there is a going for one meal and leaving dough for more than 18 minutes or 24 minutes. We go lechumra always 18 minutes, but it is about 20 minutes that you're not allowed to leave. If you leave it, it becomes chametz. What it means exactly, I don't know, because if you would give after 18 minutes, any woman that you would ask her, does your bread start rising after 18 minutes? She will say, I wish it would. I have to wait hours and hours till hopefully maybe it's going to start rising. So it's like, but anyway, there's an axioma that it is 18 becomes chametz. There's also another axioma is that mei peiros ein machmitzin. So orange juice, pure orange juice that you put in, it will not become chametz. There is chemically, it's orange juice is water, just with some other components in there.
In Pesach, they use, we don't that word.
Yeah.
They do flavored matzahs with orange juice.
Matzah shiro, yeah. But we don't.
That's it. That's fine, but
by us not, because why not by us? Because
Yerushalmi, it seems it's
no, because there is by us the Bavli. If they have mayim with mei peiros, even a little bit of mayim, it's mechametz even more. It goes very, very quickly.
You mean exclusively juice with?
No, so what you're talking is exclusive juice. And not any water is not allowed to fall in there, because if there's a little bit of water, then it's very, very quickly mechametz. That's mine in peiros. It's what? It has to be pure orange juice in order to no water at all. And we will see that what it means and where it comes from. So, sorry? Black coffee? Yeah, that's a black coffee, exactly, yeah. You don't like it, apparently. Okay. So it seems, from at first glance, is it something that was tested in a laboratorium by Chazal? So they took those and they made all kind of tests with numbers and letters, and I try not to contaminate in a room that is completely vacuum and etc. Is this how they did it, or is it simply a limud that they have received, that they have learned from the Gemara, from Sforos, and then they have applied it? Now, in reality, it's not a problem to say that it was purely a limud. It's purely a way that Chazal were mekabel and giving over to us certain tradition, even if biologically it would not make sense. There is such a case which I found in treifos. So you have Yutches treifos. There are 18 kind of treifos that Chazal have defined, and Chinuch says explicitly you should not try to ask a doctor if those 18 are true or not true, because you will find that they are not true treifos, and there are new treifos that we have today that is not in the list of the Yutches, but we don't care. It's not a biology lesson when Chazal tell us, they tell us what is treifa and what is not. It is influenced, and it was probably, how do you call it, inspired by the biology, but at the end of the day, Chazal are the ones that define what is a treifa, okay? And not the biologists that are the doctors that will tell us what is a treifa or not. So, sorry? Yeah, it's a Mishnah, yeah. And so would you have received it, or Kiblu, or it was like a tradition, or they thought of what can be a treifa and what not based on biology, but based on Sforos, and they have the right, as the Torah does not tell us what is a treifa, they have a right to define. And they can inspired by biology, but not necessarily be equal to biology, to medicine. And so therefore, this is what the Chinuch says. So maybe here also, Chametz, as the Torah does not tell me what is Chametz. The Torah doesn't tell me that you have to take this type of paper, blue paper, if you put it in and you take it out, if it becomes red, it means it's Chametz. If it stays blue, it means it's not Chametz yet. The Torah doesn't give us. The Torah just says Chametz and doesn't tell us how to define it. And so Chazal have received the right to define it themselves without any more definition, etc. The Bavli. Now, before I'm going to go into the Yerushalmi, I will tell you how does it work? How did our forefathers make bread? How did they make bread? What? Very good. It's an oven. Very good. Yeah. yeah. But how did they make the dough?
They grind the kernels.
The kernels, yeah.
And then they add a lot of
yeah. And then
they put flour and
they mix flour with water. They started to think, and they let it grow. How did it grow?
They just left it outside.
They left it outside. Okay. So if you leave it just like that outside, then nothing will happen. Sorry?
You have to cover it.
Yeah. So what you need is even when you cover it, covering won't help. What you need is what is called so'oir. So'oir is a sourdough that is a starters. We call it today starters. We ask the women that have baked sourdough bread, you will tell you that it's called the starters. What is a starter? It's the following. There are 3 elements that are making 3 or 4. Okay, 4 elements that are making a bread, and not something else. What is it? The first element is bacterial. In every single element into us, we also have in our guts, on everything that are bacterial, especially bacteria, micro, that are everywhere. And those, when they are sitting on the grains that you grinded and you put water on it, what they will do is they will start eating the starch, the kohlenhydraten. They will start eating it, and then what they will produce is they will produce acids. These are called vinegary acid, acetic acid, with another one is lactic acid. They produce acid. The only thing they do is producing acid with a little bit of carbon dioxide, CO2, a little bit, but not a lot, very little. Most of their job is to create acids. Because acid is very good, because when they get mixed into the dough, the acidity keeps it longer fresh. Okay, so it's good for the bread. It has a nice taste, an acidic taste, and it also keeps the other bacteria from not being able to grow because it becomes too acid. So it's a very good bacteria. What, sorry? No, that's a bacterial. That's a bacteria. The second thing is the yeast. Yeast is a kind of schimmel, yeast, schimmel, I don't know you want to call it, mold, kind of a mold. It's not a bacterial, it's not a living animal, not a living thing. It's kind of between a plant and a living. Okay, so it's not non-mentioned bacterial. It's kind of a structure that can reproduce itself, is eating, and makes a lot of gas. Yeah, so makes a lot of gas when it's eating, and this gas, it's carbon dioxide, and it creates a lot of gas. This is the yeast, and there's yeast everywhere. You cannot remove it. There's yeast everywhere. Certain places there is more yeast than others. If your mother made a lot of, or your father made a lot of bread in the kitchen, and with sour yeast, then there will be a lot of yeast granules out in the air. And so the more women have made bread in this kitchen, the quicker, the more there will be yeast. And so it's everywhere, the yeast. It's on the things itself, or it's in the kitchen, whatever it is, it will be everywhere. And this is called the yeast. This is the schimmel. It's kind of yeast, yeah. And this is needed to make the air, which makes, when the egg grows, then it makes a bubble. And this is why the bread is soft inside, and it's also can absorb liquids, etc. But the yeast also produces a little bit of alcohol, which is used for making beer and wine. But in the bread, the alcohol, fortunately or unfortunately, disappears the moment you put it into the oven. It gets dissolved because it's not a lot. But normally there is a little bit of alcohol, but you don't get chicken from bread. Okay, there is no chance that you can get, but there is a bit of alcohol as well.
But yeast is full of, I just checked, it's full of bacteria. Is that the point of it? It's also full of.
It's mixed. It's a mix.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I mean, the main point is.
Yeah, but there are two elements. There is the bacterial, and there is the yeast. The yeast, and those two are, the yeast is what is combined, the both two together. And so what happens is the following: when woman takes, I don't know why I say woman, it should be gender equal. So when a person takes when a person takes a bit of, it puts flour and water, he lets it a little bit become sour. It won't happen. A lot of things won't happen if he adds afterwards. So, but there will be a growth of yeast and bacterial. But at a certain time, it will stop. It stops. Then, when it stops, it encapsulates itself. That's a very big thing. The yeast, if it doesn't eat anymore, it doesn't die, but it becomes like encapsulated. It protects itself, and yeast can live for thousands of years. They found in Mitzrayim yeast still in a pot, and they've redone it. They've done bread with it. Taste how the bread tasted in Mitzrayim at the time. It's for thousands of years. And bacterial, they can also survive, but not so long, I guess. I don't know. You can't really find bacterial. They get disintegrated quickly. But then the moment you put the water again, then they start becoming awake, and they start eating more and more and more. And so whenever you refresh, you have to refresh. You put in water and you mix a bit, you let it, then it starts growing, then it stops. Then you take a bit of out and you put extra food in it, extra flour and water, fresh, and then it starts growing. And then after a certain time, after 7 times about, it becomes active. It suddenly becomes like a colony that is exponentially so big that it can recreate in a very, very quick way. And this is called the starters. It takes about 7 times, maybe 5 times, depending, like I said, depending on the quality, depending how the fingers, if there were bacteria already on the fingers, etc. It's all very dependent. There's no, how do you call it, exact science. You try, it's a try and an error. And once you have these starters is full of bacterial and yeast. And so when you put these 2 elements into another, and so suddenly they receive full of fresh, and you mix them up together, they receive full of fresh flour and water, and so they start eating, and they grow, and they produce a lot of gas. This is the yeast produces a lot of gas, and the bacteria produces a lot of acidity, and therefore when you bake it, you will have what we call sourdough bread, which tasted very sour and is extremely high bubbly, very big bubbles, because it's a lot of yeast that we're able to do. Now, that's only possible on bread that has what we call gluten. So I didn't speak about gluten. This is true for everything, even for rice. The only difference is the gluten. Why do I need gluten? What is gluten? Gluten is a protein. And the protein helps you when the proteins is this particular protein gluten, that the moment that an enzyme has eaten, it's gone into the gluten, not eaten, but it has gone into the gluten. It takes the gluten away from the granule, and then the gluten with the water can attach to another gluten protein. And they form a long chain, an extremely long chain, a very strong chain. It's very difficult to detach it. It's really a very, very strong chain. And this gluten makes that if you leave, you can see it on internet, it's called autolyse. Autolyse. If you leave it for about 20 minutes, the dough that you just mix water with flour, after 20 minutes, the gluten will start to form and it will become like a ball, very strong. You can pull on it, you'll have to pull with strength in it because it becomes very glutinous. It's very glue comes from glutinous. The word glue is from that. They used to use the glue to stick paper together. They used to make it with flour and water because then a lot of glue happened, and then I don't know how, but they extracted specifically the glue, and they could stick paper and envelopes to close and envelopes. They used gluten. It's not the rice, it's Chametz nokshe, according to the issur. Yeah, so what? The envelopes, yeah. How they used to, today they use the artificial glue. So, oil. No, it's a high concentration of a perfect balance concentration of yeast together with bacteria, active, that receive like an activity. Genetically, they are the ones that are extremely active. High concentration. And then you put it into this, oh, they have a good time. It's like you're putting a child in a store of the sweets or what? Yeah. And then they are eating and they are producing gas, and it's Labor Day. And protein. No, not Africa. No, the protein is the gluten. The protein will make a layer that will glue them all together. No. So the gluten is only there to actually encapsulate everything that happens inside, that it should not go out. And so the gas that they produce stays inside the dough. And the acid is also kind of staying inside the dough for as long as it can. And so this is the way that it happens. Now, when you do it with rice, the same procedure will happen. It will be also sour, and there will also be, the yeast will produce gas. But since there is no gluten, it will evaporate. Okay, it will just evaporate, and nothing will happen. You cannot form a bread with rice. There's only 4% gluten in the rice, and so it's not enough to actually form anything in the bread. So you cannot. Okay, so there are 3 ingredients: bacterial for the acidity, yeast for the gas, and the gluten to keep it all together. So the question now is, what is Chametz? Yeah. So it's the enzymes. It's called the enzymes. The enzymes that will get the gluten away from and so that the enzymes seem to be playing an important role in the gluten formation. Yeah. There could be. So they still don't know exactly. Everything I'm telling you, these are chemical theories that have been tested, but there is so many other interactions that we don't know of, that it could be that the fact that there is no gluten makes it less effective, that the gluten also helps in the production of the acidity. Could be, yeah, could be, and that's why Chazal call it sechoin. It's not a good sourness. But so that's how it works. Today, what they do is the women today, they don't take sour, but they buy straight away yeast from a factory, which is a highly concentrated yeast. So it's a lot of yeast in there. There's not a lot of bacteria. And so therefore, what you will have is that the bread will not be sour, but will only rise. Because the yeast gives gas, bacterial gives acid. If there's no bacterial, only yeast, so it will rise. And that's why Kleinblatt's white bread is not acid. The acidity level I checked of baker's bread and matzo is exactly the same. Okay, the pH level is between 4 and 5. Between the two, they have both the same pH levels. Only sourdough bread has a much lower pH. They are really sour. But the Kleinblatt's bread is not sour. Okay, or less, is the same sourness as matzo, not much more sour than the other one. Hence, in my WhatsApp, maybe the bread of Kleinblatt, the white bread of Kleinblatt, since it doesn't use sourdough, it uses artificial yeast, then you artificial cultures of yeast. Therefore, it does not have the sourness that a normal yeast bread, a normal sourdough bread has. Okay, so the jumbo sourdough bread is sour, is chometz, and the Kleinblatt is not chometz from the purely translation of chometz being sour. Okay, it's not more sour than the wheat itself. Okay? Wheat already is a bit sour. If you take a you take a wheat kernel, it will be sour. It's the same sourness. It doesn't increase any sourness because it only uses the yeast.
Let's see if you take it sour.
So now, what is definition? So what is definition? And so you have what? Sour and sour. Yeah. Some say that, but okay, I don't know if it's by chance. Sour and sour. Yeah. So the Igros Moshe, Moshe Feinstein, he seems to be saying, and I'm not going to, because my son just sent me now another tshuva, but I seen it in Orach Chaim Chelik Dalet. He seems to be saying that it is the tam chometz, it's the taste. What is chometz is the taste, and because that's why the Torah calls it chometz. And therefore, whatever is a taste, he wants to answer all kind of questions that we have on the Rambam, but he wants to say that the ikr of the chometz is the taste. The problem is then why is oires, which has also sour, why is this considered taste of sourness, and this is considered taste of foulness, of sirke? Why is it the same? Because the bacteria are the same, and the yeast is the same. The only thing that doesn't have arise is the gluten. So what is the difference between those two? That's one of the questions. From the Rambam, we could say that the Rambam holds that it is the rising. When you ask to people what is chometz, geresen brot. That's how we say it's geresen. Some say no, it's not the sourness, but it is the rising. In other words, it's the yeast, the schimmels that are creating is the growing. And then the question is a Rambam, a bit of Rambam like that. So the question is it the sibel or is it a simon? Is it that what creates the chometz, or is just when it rises, it means that it became sour? That's how you know that it became sour. So it's kind of a thing. And then you have others who say no, it is and we will come to that. This is the waiting of 18 minutes. It is the waiting. It's the gluten formation. Because what happens? What is very interesting? The same 18 minutes that Chazal are giving us, or the 24 minutes, you can find on internet. This is called autolyse. So when you leave, it will become completely glutinous. The whole dough will become glutinous. And this is these 80 minutes. So some say that it is the gluten that is the definition of chometz. When the gluten comes out of the granular things, and this is what creates the chometz, which makes sense because that's why Chazal say only the Chameshes Minei Dogon, which have the only thing that they have in common, particular versus the others, is the gluten. They are the only ones that have gluten. The other ones don't have gluten. There's no kidneys that have gluten. So it could be that this is kind of a definition.
That's equivalent to
Some say that it is the gluten, some say it is the rising, and some you would find say that the Rebbe Moshe Feinstein, which I found, is the tam. It's about the sourness of the bread that makes it hummus.
Just people speak like bacteria, gluten, etc. But for the Torah, what
Oh.
you don't see doesn't count.
No,
So besides the
no,
taste,
no,
or
but the
how it
taste,
looks,
no, but the taste
So
you
the
can,
taste
taste
of
you
the
can, it's sour. You can see if it rises.
yeah.
This you
That's
can
also-
see, or the element of the gluten, the fact that
But
it
after
becomes
just
sticky.
80 minutes, you see the difference.
Yeah. So
It's
if
a
you
hundred
check
different-
autolyse, if you would Google soon, autolyse, auto AUTOLYSE, this is autolyse. It's where you leave, you don't mix, you have to let it rest
then
for
it
20
become,
minutes. It becomes completely glutinous.
but-
The whole gluten is
so that's my point actually. Check the bread as it's finished or the master as it's finished, or from the full chain, because yes, it could look like different while you are doing it after 8 minutes, but if you then make the bread, it's like a master, you don't see any difference.
no. So once it became hummus, oh yeah. So those hold that
so
once it
where
became
it
hummus, it cannot become matzah anymore. So
So
yeah.
it's a full chain, it's
The
not
full
only
chain,
the end
yeah,
product for
yeah,
the time
yeah.
or the
yeah, so it's a bit. Oh, lower. The oats. Oats is significantly low in gluten. I tried not to have gluten in my diet, and so therefore I eat oats matzah. But we will see that for Pesach, the first gezayis, I will eat proper wheat. Okay. Yeah, yeah. So that's why I will not. I bought a lot of gluten-free matzahs, but I will not have it for my first gezayis because the problem is if the gluten is the matzah, is the chametz, then I will only matzah is only what can become chametz, and this cannot become chametz because it doesn't have gluten, and so therefore I have a problem. Okay. But b'diavad, because it's only there's other shittas, then it's not b'diavad. Somebody, I don't have Baruch Hashem, I don't have a celiac disease or something like that. It's just personal. I feel better when I don't eat gluten. I feel psychologically that I have more energy in my life when I don't have gluten. But it's not Baruch Hashem, I don't have any allergy. So I eat bread. Okay, I sin a lot, but I try not to. Yeah. No, but it is chamesh because it doesn't have gluten. Then it doesn't have gluten because no, but they take the mean, they just remove the gluten and then they reproduce. Okay, is it genetically still considered oats? Shiboy issur, if you don't. Yeah, it's possible it's not even chamesh aminin. Okay, it's another shaila. Maybe that's why also, since it doesn't have the gluten, it means that it has changed the essence, the genetic essence, and it's not anymore the oats that the Torah calls shiboy issur. Could be that this is as you changing genetically. No, yeah, that's why I don't worry. I'm eating wheat, but those who cannot, they have b'diavad, they otherwise they can die. I mean, it's really a disease which is dangerous. Now, what is interesting is that that the Yerushalmi, I said always that the Bavli seems to be holding that they never asked the question. The Bavli never asked the question. I don't have a Yerushalmi here, it doesn't matter, you have to trust me. The Bavli never asked the question, why don't we test it? Let's test it. Let's see. What?
It's too late. It's not Pesach, you test it.
No. Before, when they learn in Hilchos Pesach, and this becomes hummus, and this not, and they peirot, why don't they say when there is a machlokes or when they don't know, they should say, let's go and test it. Nobody goes and tests and says, hey, I tested it, and that's not hummus. What? I don't know what they should test, but how they test. So in Yerushalmi, in Meseches Challah, not in Psuchim, but in Meseches Challah, the beginning, he says, ask the question, the Chameshes Aminim, to ask the question, and there's a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, if Eures is Chometz or not. So the Yerushalmi asked the question, let's test it. Simple question that the Bavli never asked. Right? The Yerushalmi asked the question, let's test it. What does it mean? So they had a way to test it somehow. They had a lab where they can test it. They have a way to know what is Chometz and what not. We don't know today whether they hid it specially, which I believe they did, but they had a way to test it. They Chachamim could sit down together around the table, Chometz or Chametz. I don't know what they did. Either they looked at it, or they tasted it, or they smelt it, but somehow they had a way to say this is Chametz and this is not Chametz. We don't know what it is, but they had a way. And so the Gemara explains, the Yerushalmi explained that the machloikis between Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri and the Chachomim were around the table. They said Chametz. He said Chametz. They said, this is Sichon. Yeah, that's the machloikis. Says the Yerushalmi. The machloikis was simply in a subjective metzius. They said this is. Non, des Bavli pas. Mais les
aussi, les raisons sont.
Ouais.
C'est pas toujours une raison.
Non,
Une autre raison.
mais la Yerushalmi bien. Yerushalmi a dit qu'ils ont testé. Yerushalmi tells us that they went out, they tested it, and the Chachomim said, this is a Sichon, and whatever, they tasted it, I don't know what it is, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said, this is proper Chametz. And so therefore, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said, it's proper Chametz, it's Chametz. Even if it's not the Chamesh Saminim, even it's not from Chamesh Saminim that Challah, and so it doesn't make a connection between Challah and Matzah and Chametz, and there is no, he doesn't care. He says, this is Chametz, tastes like Chametz, it smells like Chametz, it is Chametz. Okay? That's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. And Chacham says, no, this is stinking. This is not Chametz. So basically, this is, you see here that Yerushalmi took a very laboratorium approach. It doesn't tell us what they check and how did they check, but it gives you that you can check it. In other words, there is a way to check it. The Bavli not. Bavli, it is a purely like trefer. This is, Chazal told us, don't ask any questions. Even if biologically you will see that you put orange juice in the dough, it will be exactly the same. You won't even be able to make the difference between those two. We don't give it. We don't care. What we do is we just assume this is the Bavli. Yerushalmi says no. We have to check. If you don't know, check. This I don't know what the Yerushalmi holds. Also 18 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. Also the testing. Yeah.
So it means for the Yerushalmi, it's a Messiah. What is Chametz not busy?
Yeah. No. So they could have said also the Yerushalmi could have said, let's test it today. Let's us test it. So why the Yerushalmi is interesting. Yerushalmi doesn't go and say today, okay, why Machlok Rabbi ben Nuri and Chachomim? And so Yerushalmi could have said, you know what, the Chachomim of today, the Bezdin of today, let's sit down, let's take the oiros of today, and let's try out. And yeah, what do you think? And we'll see if there is a majority that holds it Chametz, then it will be Chametz.
So it's a Messiah. So
They don't. Oh, but why not? Why not?
That's the point. It means today for the Yerushalmi.
Yeah.
It means there is no logic. It's basically
There was a logic, but it's not logic anymore.
No, not in Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi is basically what it means when you sit and you test. Yeah, when I was on Pesach with my father.
No. They tasted sour, a certain sourness, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said, "This is the sourness that is the Chametz."
Yes, that's what people say. How you know it? Because your roof told you that's the test of otherwise. How you know it? It's a bit like for
no, it's the same. No, he would say no. He would say, I try with chitim. I try chitim. Sourness, okay, and then I try oil. Yeah, it's the same. That's all.
Yeah, but okay, it's
the
like
same.
above. You need the specialist for it.
Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri.
He was the specialist. Exactly.
He was the baker.
No, that's not the question. That's not the question. So he tasted. He said it's the same like the Chamesh Saminim. It's the same. So therefore he says it's the same. Or the texture, it's the same texture, or whatever it is. He felt it is the same.
But do we have other example like this? If you go to the field and you test the real, your subjectivity.
It's a Yerushalmi.
It's interesting. It's not a question. It's just interesting.
Yeah.
Which means today, on Pesach we will not be able to eat any matzah or anything because it's all a suffix. If it's Chametz or not, we don't know anymore. We don't know.
No, if it's less than 80 minutes, the Bavli. If you bake it less than
Yerushalmi, not the Bavli.
because we don't know if this.
If Yerushalmi was in place on Pesach, we could not eat any matzah because we don't think it's Chametz.
Why
Ça
would
fait que
you?
d'oraita la chumrah.
Why? Because it's maybe 18 minutes is not. Maybe this type of wheat is quicker. Maybe the air.
No, but that's Yerushalmi.
Yeah.
That's Bavli. Yerushalmi say you have to test. I mean,
No, Yerushalmi also gives rules. The Mishnah says this is chometz and this is not chometz. So oires is aloche. Oires is not chometz.
If it's test, it means
No.
it can change with time.
It can change.
So in that case, you can.
Yeah. 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 So how did it work? So how did he do it? So yeah. 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 And and so it's more than yeah. But that means that they have to try out and they have to leave, they have to wait a bit and then try out again and then wait a bit and then try and then they made a sample before Pesach. They do it before Pesach. They try out. The measuring, yeah. And now it can be even an hour for them, according to them. Yeah, but the question is, I wanted to know if they're also agreeing with the meal for shehir, if they also mention it. It's only the Bavli, or it's also Yerushalmi, because according to what he says, then it means that you have to taste it. It's a metzius. You always have to taste it before to know if it's chometz or not. It's not. There's no axioma. It's continuously testing. But that's why What?
Ce débat, est-ce qu'il y a une raille? Mais je parle pas. Je parle pas. Je parle de la science. C'est une raille de cette époque-là. Parce que, à mon avis, c'est une chose moderne.
Ouais.
De tenir compte de la science.
Mais comment Moshe Rabbeinu?
Si tu fais une démonstration, tu peux nous expliquer cela. Non,
le Yerushalmi l'a fait. Ça veut dire la question que tu poses, qu'est-ce qui se passe avec les générations avant? Qu'est-ce qu'il y a avant ça?
Tu veux faire un dessin sur un métier. Il y avait des physiciens qui sont à l'aéroport du Caire, qui sont venus expliquer
aux Juifs.
C'était pas des Juifs,
des Hébreux.
C'était des Hébreux.
Les Hébreux.
Ils sont venus expliquer aux Hébreux, écoutez, venez dans le labo,
on va vous... avec des tests. Des tests.
Ou tout simplement, Chad, on dit que c'est bon, c'est pas.
Mais c'est ça la question. Mais pourquoi l'auteur appelle ça chometz?
Je viens de lire quand on parlait sur le pain, ceux qui ont inventé la fermentation.
Ce sont les Égyptiens.
C'est les Égyptiens.
Ouais.
Donc en gros, on va contre leur science.
Non, c'est ça justement. On veut enlever l'Égypte. C'est ça que Rachel que tu n'aimes pas. Il explique. Sorry. Il explique que c'est tout le union. The whole union of chometz is because it is an Egyptian invention, and so the Torah says, "I don't know Egyptian, no Egyptian minog, nothing from." It's like Cherus from Egypt.
Just read from now that it's from Mitzrayim.
It comes from Mitzrayim. The invention of the soil comes from Mitzrayim. What? Sorry? Oh, the Torah says no time right. So, okay, I will give you a definition. I will give you a definition, which I believe personally, you don't have to like it, but I believe personally, which is a very good definition. And I've seen it on internet, and I can send you the link if you want. It's a very good, somebody who made this whole thing as well. And unfortunately, I only saw it now before I started shear, so it's a very good shear there as well. And he says the following: I will give you my own way of his inspiration. Why don't we eat chometz? Because we did not have time to let it rise. Why would we want to let it rise? Because bread that is risen is better than bread that is not risen. Yeah. So, in other words, it's very interesting because normally when you slaughter meat, the quicker you prepare it, the better it is. The longer you let it out, the maybe not the Français, the French, they know exactly.
Non,
but-
la viande fermentée, c'est.
Ah, fermenté, fermenté.
Non, mais quand on la laisse pourrir, c'est là que c'est bon.
Ouais. But normally, freshness is always better. Bread, the longer you wait, the better it becomes. Right? That is the advantage of bread. So the Torah says, I don't want you to eat something that you waited in order for it to become better. If you waited and it becomes worse, then you're allowed to eat. If you're not allowed to eat, just before, Torah says, don't eat something that if you would have waited longer, it would be better. Don't. Because your parents wanted to wait, they couldn't wait, so you have to eat it straight away, bake it as quicker. Waiting longer would become better. And so therefore, it's the definition is the chametz is not the growing, the higher, the sourness, etc. It's the waiting. That is the definition of the chametz. The not waiting is what is matzah. And the waiting to it to get better is the thing. Therefore, the 18 minutes, if you wait 18 minutes, it becomes better. Why? Because if you're waiting 18 minutes, then first, it's not a sourness, but what happens is the gluten that forms. And therefore, you have much more of a nicer texture of the gluten, and therefore the little bit of sourness will be able to be trapped inside together with the gas that is formed, and it will be better. If you don't wait 18 minutes, then it's nearly no impact at all. So it is the waiting. The rice, since there's only 4% of gluten, there is no, all the gas evaporates straight away, and the acidic things, they also can disappear quickly through evaporation, and therefore you will smell it. Bread that is still in the dough will smell much less than the bread that is made from rice. Why? Because it's not trapped. It is not trapped, and therefore the rice will smell quicker. And so therefore waiting for rice is no point. There's no point of waiting with a dough of rice more than you have to. There's no point. You can straight away, you make the dough. It's much better when you put it straight into the oven than if you leave it out. So rice is not chametz because there is no point of waiting. It doesn't become better when you wait. The more you wait, it becomes sour, and the sourness which evaporates and stinks because there is no encapsulation of this particular sourness which gives you the flavor which makes it go a little bit slower, etc. So this is there's no advantage in the rice to wait. Made payros, the same thing. What happens with made payros is that the gluten, this somebody said on the website, there is somebody in Bar Ilan, the professor in agriculture, he said that the gluten, that if we have water which is made payros, since the made payros has molecules around them from the fruit, the gluten is not detaching enough. This gluten does not detach enough, and so therefore, and since there is a lot of sugar in the made payros, the bacteria will eat it straight away. A lot sugar straight away. Glucose normally has to change the carbohydrate, and then you call it to become sugar. It's a whole transformation. There it doesn't, and so they can eat the sugar, and straight away there will be gas, and straight away, and then the gluten has not formed yet, and the gas is gone already. So it's no point of waiting because everything will disappear. The gluten will be slowed down by the made payros. If you have the mind of made payros, then I found I think in Moshe Feinstein, that the advantage of mime in made payros, a bit of water, is that the water, if you put a bit of water on the dough, then the water will not find only the place where it is, right? There's not a lot of water. But if you put a bit of water in made payros, then it gets mixed completely. And when you mix it completely, the water gets into each and every, even a little bit of water will go in the whole dough, will be separated in the whole dough, and hence it will be able to activate the gluten, and then together with the made payros, it will produce much quicker yeast gas because there is sugar in the made payros, and so therefore when you add a bit of water to made payros, it makes it quicker. It helps the production of the dough quicker, and it will be better if you wait longer. Sorry? No, but the water in the prepares is always surrounded by the color and the sugar, and it's like it's never purely, the molecules are always surrounded. That's why when you leave orange juice for a long time, only the pulp will go down, but it will always remain orange. It's yeah. So because the water is always surrounded by molecules of the food, and so it doesn't attach itself to the gluten, and therefore the gluten cannot be formed properly. A little bit it will be formed, but not enough. And then all the sugar that is in the water, in the juice, the bacteria will chaparine, and they will produce everything, and then it will disappear. The gluten makes it that it's nice, and then it doesn't become nice anymore. It becomes stinky, sour, and therefore it's not really proper.
First of all, yes, we have the matzah, and to go against what you just said, with the wine. The more you wait, better.
Yeah. But wine and matzah is the same. But here the Torah does not want on the bread because it's a procedure that the Mitzrayim have found.
But that could be my message. If I understood from you, it's an idea. Let's say it's moral wise. We should not wait.
Yeah, not to wait.
Why? I mean.
No, not to, because your forefathers, that's what the Torah says. I didn't say it, the Torah says.
No, I'm asking. It's a question.
To show that we went out quickly.
No,
this is the nest of this going out quickly.
Because we know today why the Mitzrayim used matzah. It wasn't exactly matzah, close to the slates, not a little bit slates. There is a good reason, which is not what you said. The reason was simple, because when you eat normal bread, it's easier for the stomach to digest it. So you are hungry much more for matzah. When you eat matzah, it takes much more time for your stomach to digest it. So you're not hungry for a far longer period of time. That was one of the reasons. They say the opposite.
If you look in dietitian today, they tell you sourdough bread is much more filling, and keeps you better in not eating.
For the matzah, I'm 100% sure.
Okay.
But okay.
The dietitian will not agree with you. But anyway, the Torah says that on the way out of Mitzrayim, your forefathers wanted to wait, and they did not have time to wait. And so the Torah says from now on, Chametz is something that normally if you wait, it will get better. And you don't wait, this is how you show that you don't want to eat Chametz. But if something like rice, if you wait, it will get better. It won't get better. It will even get worse. Then there is no point. Then this is not Chametz, and therefore this is also not matzah. Just to combine, just to give you a very interesting Mishnah, and I will not. Will just finish off with this now. The Mishnah. There's a Mishnah that says what I explain you is that the Bavli holds. What does the Bavli hold? It's an axioma. The Yerushalmi holds. It's a lab. It's lab. We test it. We can test it, and they have a way to test it. And so there's a Mishnah that says that the oise issur min oires or min achitim im yesh bo tam dogon hayeves chala v'yotze dechovoso b'matzah. In other words, if you take a dough of oires, of rice, and you put a bit of dogon, a bit, not a lot. If there is a tam in the dough of wheat, then you are yotze dechovoso b'pesach. Matzah, even if you eat a kezais. That's a whole machlokes b'shonim, how to explain it. So the Gemara says, from here, the Gemara in Zvochin says, from here is a rai, the tam that the tam dogon is enough, and it gives over to the oires, and the oires, if it has a tam from chitim, and therefore you yoitze tam kikedoraisa, which is normally not the halacha like that, but then the Gemara. But this is the Gemara in Bavli. The Gemara says, comes to Yerushalmi, and Yerushalmi says, you know what it is? When chitim are together with oires, listen carefully, when chitim are together with oires, the chitim are turning biologically the oires into chitim, called greire. It's goirer. It's a Yerushalmi taste it. The Yerushalmi says that there is a biological phenomena that the chitin is goirer, the
rice to
the
become
rice to become chametz, become wheat. And so you see again, the Bavli, so the question is, so the Rambam asked the question, so if that's the case, how can the Gemara bring a raya from that? That's an exception. Elomai, says the Rambam, that Bavli holds that if Tamke Iker is not Doraisa, then there is no Greire. What's going on? It's a biological. And there he says the Aloha. So you see very clearly the Ramban held, that the Bavli held that we don't look on biology. We look on what the Torah tells us, what you says. We don't ask scientists. We don't care about the Yutres Treifers, if you can find a medication, antibiotics, or you can fix a little, make the hole, you can make a stents in the animal's heart and everything will be fine. No, we don't care about that. We just have our Masoros and that's how we go. But the Yerushalmi says, no, I have to check. There is a chemical reaction. And so now suddenly the oires becomes chometz. Oires, I can yoitze dich. That's what the Mishnah says. Okay. And so the Ramban holds that the Bavli holds that it would not make greire if not for the how does if he has a problem. So he answers that if if Tamke Iker is the Reise, then there would not be any greire. So it clearly sees that there is a conflict. So Reb Shimon Shkop, I don't have the time, but Shimon Shkop is beautiful. I was going to explain you something beautiful in how he explains, but very lomdus in how he can combine those two together, but that's not for today. What I would like to add to this is the Orcha Shulchan. We think that kidneys, why don't we eat kidneys? Is we don't eat kidneys because there were sometimes chitim that are mixed. It's a strange story. So he explains very nicely. He says the following. Since the Yerushalmi says that we can make labs, the Chazal were afraid, I was showing him, they were afraid that people would start making testing labs and they would say, and they would try, and they would say, 1 second, oires, you say is not chometz. Oires is not chometz. How does it taste? Okay. Then they would take oats, kind of an oats, and they would taste and says, hey, it's the same as oires. This is not chometz, this is also not chometz. And then they will start making their own, they will start developing labs, and everybody will say, do you think? No, you don't. What do you think? You think it tastes like chometz? No, yes, no. Yeah. Then they will make labs, and then suddenly they will take chitim, and they'll end up doing as chitim. No, the wheat is no chometz. Wheat tastes the same as the oil, and there is no chometz. And so they will do a balagan, and then people lose it. So basically, he says that the kidneys were also in order to avoid us making all kind of laboratory because of Yerushalmi. Because you see that between Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, two Gedolim Ador, Chachomim and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, they both argued on a simple taste. So imagine how 10,000 smaller people like us that we will try to taste, how we will make mistakes and we will not be able to find the right taste. And so the Orcha Shulchan said, therefore Chazal says, kidneys also. We don't want you to have kidneys because we don't want, because we're afraid that. And I believe that that's why we don't know today. Don't bother even trying. This is it, and forget about the biology, because otherwise it will come to. Then this is the real reason. Says the Orcha Shulchan. He says the reason of the kidneys. So now at least you know a very nice reason, much better than just mixing. Sorry. Like muktzah, yeah. If you will, then you will be able. That's how you will also. You will make all kind of laboratorium tests, and so therefore they said all the kidneys. They will also, because somebody will try, they will say, hey, this doesn't, this taste is the same sourness as the shiboy l'shul, as oats. And since this is mutter, then the oats should also be mutter, should not be any more chometz. And then they will compare the oats with the soirim, and they will say soirim that we have today, not soirim. It doesn't taste. And then suddenly you have no chometz anymore. And no matzah. And what then? A contra the kidney shear, yeah. But so this is, I found a very, very nice explanation of the Aruch HaShulchan, and it fits with our two things. The Bavli is really very strongly axiomatic. The Yerushalmi really looks at the biology tests and made the test and continuously makes tests. But we don't have the test anymore. We don't know what to test. And the definition, you have three kinds of definitions. Either it is the sourness, the Moshe Feinstein. You have the Rambam seems to be more on the blowing up. And there are others who want to explain that it is the gluten. But the best explanation, which I found, is the waiting. If you wait, it becomes better, then this is chometz. If you wait and it doesn't become better, in the contrary, it becomes worse or it doesn't improve at all, then this is not called chometz. So chometz is when I stop before I have to stop because I want to continue, but I don't have the possibility to continue because the Torah doesn't let me. Similar to our forefathers, they wanted to continue. In other words, it was going to get better when they were waiting, and they were not allowed to wait, and therefore they were stopped. That's why rice, meiperos, mayim, together with meiperos, and the 18 minutes we can explain with that type of svara. And this is really the chometz. Chometz is the waiting. That's why ein ma'abirin ala mitzvahs, and also chimutz means waiting. It's waiting. It's lo la'achmitz as azman. It's a waiting and not a sourness. It's a waiting so that it shouldn't become, but it's not a sourness as a negative perspective, but it is a waiting perspective. This is the whole idea of chometz, and matzah is the quick, is to make it quick. As we already said, lesizbach al chometz dam zifri. It's also chometz means the quickness of the not to wait. May we be zoche to have, well, it's still not, we have still a week, but maybe we zoche to then to the Gula Shlema, and that the preparation for the Pesach should be with full kashrus. I didn't have the time today to explain the unity versus the uniformity versus diversity. I'm sorry. So
Next
it will
week
be
is Shabbos.
next week, Shabbos next week. It's Hashem. I'll speak to the Gaboim, and then I'll be able to give. You'll be here next week. Not yet. Okay. I'll and I can't record it on Shabbos. We don't. There's a minute not to do it. And,
That's exactly we find you.
you are yeah. Okay, call to.